And we'll go ahead and get started.
This meeting is being recorded.
So we're happy to have you all back. And it looks like there might be a couple new people. I'm just guessing. I don't always remember everybody, but if you happen to be new and you want to care to share with us how you found out about the sessions, we'd love to hear it. And that's about it. So all you need to do is unmute your little microphone and say hello.
Hi, I'm Amber. I heard about it through Oregon Medical Group, through my doctor.
Nice. Well, welcome, Amber. And we are happy to have you. And we're here to have some fun and also learn a bit. So if you have questions, don't be shy. Feel free to ask away. And if we don't have the answer, someone in the group does.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I'm Debbie, and I'm new. I heard it at the doctor's as well.
Was that Oregon Medical Group also?
Yes.
We're thrilled about Oregon Medical Group changing how medicine is practiced, thinking that most every patient that they see, at least some of the providers, can benefit from these classes. So we sure hope so. We've seen some very inspiring stories. And so regardless of what you're trying to do, whether it's just have more energy, whether it's to get off of pills, keep yourself from having to have pills, lowering blood pressure, losing weight, so many benefits here that you can glean without having to pay any money for it. These are all free sessions, and we are going to do our best to share the science with you and let you make the decision as to what you want to do with your life. Any other thoughts from anybody? Anyone want to share anything?
I got a comment about the book by Chef AJ called Unprocessed. It's marvelous.
Oh, great. I actually haven't read that one.
You know, it's an old one from her.
Yep.
And she gives her own personal history, which I can't believe how she lived through it till she was in her 40s. And now she's helping a lot of other people and herself. But she does gluten-free and as much unprocessed items in putting together her food. And then of course she's a chef, so she knows how to do it. But she doesn't have a million ingredients, and it helps to have a chopper, the Vitamix or something similar. And she even had a great waffle recipe. So she follows McDougall and Esselstyn. And anyway, I recommend that book. I got it online. She has a bunch of recipes, and they're not complicated to use.
They're berries. I don't know what kind of berry.
Great, thanks for sharing. Unprocessed by Chef AJ.
Okay, I've been concerned about when somebody finds out you're doing this, they either say cool or they say, where are you getting your omega fatty acids, omega-3s? Where are you getting your zinc that you need to get from meat? Where are you getting your hemi iron? And then how are you getting your the increased lean muscle mass that comes to people as they age that eat meat? that normally would be losing muscle mass. And I think everyone agrees that processed meats, meaning salted meats, is bad for you. But the majority of the population certainly still thinks that you have to eat red meat to have good muscle mass, and these very few nutrients and fatty acids that make up protein that may not be found in plants quite as readily as they are in beef or meat. So anyway, that's a really big deal for me. Is you almost don't want to tell anybody
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah, we can answer all those questions. I just kind of get a kick out of, not to be cavalier or anything, but you know, someone has suddenly, when while someone's polishing off a bacon double cheeseburger from Carl's Jr., and you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, there's suddenly a nutrition expert and asking you where you're getting all these different nutrients. It's like, while they're, you know, to have tons of chronic diseases on medications and eating the standard American diet, they're suddenly concerned about you, and actually you're eating in a way that the science supports is going to give you the best health. So, but yeah, all those are great questions to have answers for. And I think that's, you know, coming to these classes and you get the answers to all those, and you'll have them all in written form, you know, especially pretty much everything you just asked in those questions is on the document that we had at the end of the last session, the review question and answers. Though all those answers to all those questions are there, and it's in writing. So those would be kind of things, if you can either change the subject when they bring them up, or you can, just say, hey, you know, I'm getting everything I need, and I'm being followed by my doctor, everything else, and I'm getting off medications and I'm getting healthy. Or if you have been studied enough, you can have those things memorized. And like Dr. McDougall has McDougall one-liners on his website, where it kind of has the answers to a lot of those kind of common questions where you get your protein and all these different things that are kind of a little more simplistic. But if you want to have the exact answer to all those things, we do have those in those particular documents, and we can answer some of those here right now between Charlie and I.
Virgil always says, how does a cow get its protein? They look pretty
Exactly.
healthy out there in the field, and he got that from you and Charlie.
All right, exactly. Yeah, it's like in the Game Changers, Patrick Baboumian, who's the strongest man on the planet. He can lift, essentially deadlift and carry 1,200 pounds or something, and he's considered the strongest man on the planet. And someone asked him, hey, how are you as strong as an ox eating nothing but plants? And he goes, well, have you ever seen an ox eat meat? An ox eats plants, right? So it's just kind of some of those things, but yeah.
We all agree that there is a lot of confusing information that we are learning. We live under a lot of myths, and we have to make a decision as to who we trust. So that's a very important aspect for those of you who are new to the class. 1 week you may hear that coconut oil is wonderful for your health. Another week you may learn that it has so much saturated fat, it's definitely not a healthy choice. And it may be difficult for you to reconcile that conflict of the differing information you're receiving. So Scott and I, about 10 years ago, started searching around, looking for sources, and we have listened, we've watched, we've read, we've done whatever we can to really follow the science. Now, who's promoting the science? If you look for people who are not selling supplements, if you look for people who, you know, don't require this, you know, giving you information for a fee or whatever it is, if you look for people who are, you know, reviewing the literature, sharing what they have to anyone at no cost, and then most importantly, giving you the documentation of the evidence-based articles upon which they're making this decision, you may migrate to the mentors that we have chosen to follow. Dr. Michael Greger is one of them. He reviews every article on nutrition around the world with 19 other volunteers. They do this as a labor of love and to provide you with the latest and updated evidence-based findings. He's not, selling supplements for you. You have to pay a special fee to get some special information. None of that. You go to his site, you get to see the references he uses. And to back him up, in my mind, are a number of other physicians, Dr. Neil Bernard, John McDougall, Caldwell Esselstyn. There are PhDs like T. Cullen Campbell. There are other doctors like Garth Davis, a GI specialist or a surgeon who's apologizing for telling people to eat more protein after they've had a bypass. And so they eat more animal products and wind up eating right through the bypass. There's Dr. Bolshevich, Dr. B, who's the GI specialist. All these people are in agreement, and there are a whole bunch more that I haven't named, who we follow, who are on the same page, who are trying to show you the science that will help you be healthy, that in many ways goes against what our culture is teaching us. So Ken, you've come up with a number of myths that people live under. One of the biggest ones is the heme iron. Heme iron actually is not a healthy choice. Plant iron is not heme iron. Heme iron is the iron you get from blood that you only get from animal products. Plant iron is actually healthy and doesn't lead to liver damage and other problems associated with it. So, and yet the people who like to eat meat like to say, oh, you aren't getting enough heme iron. That's the hemi iron or heme iron. We can address, like Scott said, every single one of those aspects that you talked about. And at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. Who do you trust? So maybe you want to go to a medical student, someone who's really keyed in to learning, what's fact here and what's fiction, and who should he or she be following in terms of their advice. So we have one with us tonight. Maybe we have more, but we have one special one that I know of. And she might kind of address some of that myth that you've been listening to and how she made a decision that this is something she should do. So Lisa, how you doing tonight?
The way that you do that transition every time so seamlessly blows my mind. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. I am a second-year osteopathic medical student at Western University in Pomona, Southern California. And long story short, I've been working with Scott and Dr. Ross and several of you who have reached out wanting some more personalized help with your diet or sleep problems or wanting to exercise more consistently. And I'm there to help make a plan that works for you and provide some accountability and help you learn about more nutrition and the things that you like to eat or don't like to eat. So it's been a lot of fun for me. It's a great experience for me to actually get to talk to real patients, and it's all free. And if you're interested, I'll put my email in the chat, and we also have a Facebook group where all the information is as well, and you can join that too. And I came to the conclusion that plants were good based off of personal experience. And I think that's the only way that you can really do it. So you can learn and read all you want and watch all the videos you want, but until you try it for yourself and you give it a few weeks, a few months for you to actually see the changes, I think that's the best way that you can actually learn about it. Just learn as you go. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Well, I'm interested in working with Lisa to design, make sure my program is helping deal with the muscle mass thing. So my big concern about protein is I'm on some hormones that are they're well known. We're trying to suppress androgen, testosterone, and prostate specific antigen. We're trying to stop cancer from moving, and their male androgens. So we take female or hormones to neutralize, and it's working. There's between the diet, I mean the new lifestyle and the hormones, I've got my cancer cells stopped. Of course, they haven't metastasized, or it'd be too late probably, but so they're floating around in there and they're not multiplying and dividing right now. But the one side effect I'm getting is quite noticeable muscle loss. I'm an avid skier, backpacker, and climber, and you can really see my legs getting skinny. So that's why I'm a little obsessed right now with protein. And I'm not eating meat. I mean, I'm not cheating. I haven't eaten meat in 4 months. And I'm just hoping that's not helping with, helping create this muscle loss problem.
Yeah, so the best thing you can do is keep doing that exercise, that resistance exercise, especially a little weightlifting, something more than just aerobic to help build the muscle. And then as you've learned from these classes, as long as you get enough calories, you're always going to get enough protein. So you don't have to worry about getting a certain amount of protein or right amount of protein. Just as long as you're eating enough calories, you'll always get enough protein. So, if you really want to hedge your bet, then you can just eat extra servings of beans, some nuts and seeds, because those are your champions when it comes to protein, because they are a little bit higher in calories, especially nuts and seeds. But your half a cup of beans is 7 grams of fiber, and it's got like 50+% of the calories are from protein. So you're going to be getting more than enough protein. So that resistance exercise and getting enough calories, and which means getting enough protein. So as long as you're not just eating non-starchy vegetables, so if you're eating just salads all the time, you're never going to get enough calories from eating that. So then you're not going to get enough protein. But if you're eating starchy vegetables, beans, whole grains, potatoes and sweet potatoes, nuts and seeds, all the things we talk about in these classes, you're going to get enough calories, and then you're going to get enough protein. Because what you don't want to do is get the animal protein, because the animal protein is going to have that heme iron, which cancer cells are often, or cancerous tumors are often full of heme iron. Also that IGF-1 you've learned about, the insulin-like growth factor 1, which is a cancer fertilizer, essentially a cancer promoter. And that you only get lots of that from animal sources of protein. So and again, going back to that, the strongest man on the planet, the largest land mammals on the planet eat nothing but plants, and bodybuilders and all the professional athletes and stuff that are eating 100% plant-based diets, they're getting enough calories, so they're getting enough protein as well, even with all their exercise.
And take this into consideration, Ken. Dean Ornish is the only study that I'm aware of where they put people on a whole food plant-based diet and actually showed the PSA reducing, going down. I don't know of any other studies that have shown that when it comes to your food choices. And so if you continue with the standard American diet, which includes the animal products, you are putting yourself potentially at risk for stimulating growth of those prostate cancer cells that may be hanging around that are not showing up, not metastasizing now, because you're avoiding that. And so you're getting thinner legs, probably down to your ideal body weight, but Scott's right. Do the resistance exercises, eat enough calories and you'll get enough protein. And don't worry about eating animal protein. It's not going to be, from the science as we see it, a beneficial thing for you to do. And I know you're a bit confused on it. So we encourage you to look at Ornish's study where he reversed early stage prostate cancer.
I'm not confused. I just read and see a lot of views, and I certainly hear a lot of people saying, you know, balance is the key to everything. And I read Michael Pollan, who's a real champion for balance, and I kind of think he's kind of a champion for the paleo lifestyle. So I'm just looking at different lifestyles and hoping I'm chose the right one, but for some reason I feel really responsible to stick to this. It's surprising me, but it just seems like of everything I've heard, it just makes the most sense. But I still think for a lot of people, maybe a paleo diet is fine if they really have to have meat. It's kind of what I tell people. I don't want to sound like I'm preaching.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
Didn't Dr. Greger say that people on a paleo diet have a 50% higher chance of dying early than people on a plant-based diet?
Have you heard that, Ken?
Well, yeah.
Have
That
you
was more,
Have a 50% chance of a higher chance of dying earlier than eating a plant-based diet?
That might explain why I'm not doing it.
yeah.
I
To
don't
be
know
more
what
accurate,
I don't know what the percentage is, but those who are doing keto and paleo is very similar, have decreased blood flow after a year on the one study that's been done, and they do have a lesser life expectancy.
Yeah,
and those studies,
a
those stu-
recent video.
those studies are on keto, low carb, not paleo. Paleo is a little bit different, but just depends on what kind of paleo diet you're following. So a lot of people that are doing paleo are kind of based on how much meat and other animal products they're eating. That it is more or less a low carb diet. But if they're actually following it by the book, how the diet was designed by Boyd Eaton, then it is actually a mostly plant-based diet. But that's just not how people are tending to follow it. But the data on the worst blood flow in the heart, the 30+% all-cause mortality, and then 50+% heart cardiovascular disease mortality, which means death, is for low carb, animal-based low carb and keto types of diets. Just to set the record straight there.
I'm curious about something. I wonder if you've ever done any presentations for teens and young people, because I come across a lot of them who, for philosophical reasons, want to eat plant-based diet, but they're managing to get enough calories without nutrients. They're eating things like McDonald's, leaving off the bun, that kind of thing. I mean, leaving off the burger. They're eating a white bun with lettuce, a piece of iceberg lettuce. It's really a thing. And it would be so great. They're not thinking about how long they're going to live. They're thinking about that they don't want to kill animals.
Yeah, the kind of the junk food vegan kind of thing.
Yeah.
So people do it for different reasons. Yes, social justice, animal cruelty, environmental factors, sustainability. There's a lot of reasons to.
Yep.
not
Which is
eat
great.
animal products.
I'm proud of them. I just wish they also knew something about nutrition.
Yeah, right.
Well,
That's kind of what's good. Go ahead.
If you have anybody that allows us to come in and do a talk we're more than willing to come and talk at any one of the schools. I did that when I was in
Awesome.
Roseburg. We talked at the high school, and the students were very appreciative and had some good questions. And do you want to jump in a little bit on that topic, Eric?
No, I just want to say the same thing, that if you ever need anyone who might speak to a group like a high school group, I would love to. I mean, I think that'd be great. I think Missy Carlson would also like to. So me and Missy have been talking about possibly doing some of these kind of talks. So I think that'd be great.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Missy is the pediatric cardiologist in town that's plant-based as well.
What's her last name?
Carlson, Carlson.
That's a great segue. I can show the provider website. It's a good segue into that. Let me go ahead and share my screen here real quick. I was planning to do that. I was planning to do that anyway tonight. So let me go close this out here. Go to our provider website here. So I'm going to be sending out an email this Sunday's email. I'm going to put a link to this website here. And I've kind of spoken about it in some of the other classes before. We have a group of medical providers in the Eugene Springfield area that have this common goal of promoting a more whole food plant-based diet for the community. So this is our website, and we're going to be starting a newsletter and an email list, so you can get on an email list to get a newsletter. We'll send out probably once a month or so, as well as there'll be information in the newsletter emails that we'll put out in the future, as well as information on this website for upcoming community events. Of course, a lot of it depends on what the situation is with the pandemic, but where we can do educational events, maybe do potlucks, do walks in the park, just kind of network together, hopefully physically. Maybe we'll have to do some stuff virtually as well, but in the meantime, but I wanted just to show you the actual website. So we don't have too much on it yet, but this is the home page, and this is a link to the sign up for these classes you're in right now. So it's, you don't have, if you're already on the email list already for me and come to these classes, you don't need to sign up for this. This is just for the classes you're in right now. Here's our mission and vision statement. We have a few resources put up here. We have, this is more for medical providers, this particular one right here for providers. It's a really full article on lifestyle medicine and all the components of lifestyle medicine, and how a medical provider can kind of implement it in their practice, because we're hoping to draw not only you guys in the community to this website, but also medical providers in the area. And I'll show you some of the providers that we have in the group so far. And this is an article that Dr. Tuliani, he's an interventional cardiologist here in town. He submitted this one. And this one's kind of like we were talking about earlier, sustainability, and what kind of diet is sustainable for the planet, feeding the planet. This is for people that want to, so Charlie and I have both taken this class. It's a, T. Colin Campbell's through Cornell Center for Nutrition Studies. It's a certificate program. It is a little spendy, but if it's something you're really invested in, want to learn, it's a 6-week online nutrition course, basically. And then we have just one other thing here, an article that Charlie and I published and got published in a continuing education article for case managers. So it's a nationwide journal for people that work in case management. So case management's like nurses that work for medical organizations. We have them at Oregon Medical Group, and they're invested in public health and chronic disease management. And Charlie and I got published this article in this journal, so you can read it here. It's a kind of a full article on the benefits of eating a whole food plant-based diet. So that's there. And then real quick, let me show you the providers. So we also have a list of some documentaries. You can look at that. And then providers. So we have like 29 people in the group so far, but we have some of us are more involved than others as this group is young and developing. So there's Dr. Colgrove, who just spoke just a second ago. He's a pediatrician at Oregon Medical Group. He's in the group. Here's Dr. Tushar Tuliani. He's a cardiologist at McKenzie Heart Group here in town, interventional cardiologist. Here's Dr. McIver. He's a general surgeon at McKenzie Willamette Summit Surgical. He's in the group. There's me, and there's Charlie. And then Thomas Bosch, he's a dietitian in the area, good friends with him, and he's in the group, pretty active in our group. Here's Sean Egglestone. He's another dietitian. He works at McKenzie Willamette. He's actually the person that designed this website. And then he hasn't put his picture in here yet. And then Dr. Sage, he used to work at Oregon Medical Group. Now he's a hospitalist at McKenzie Willamette, and also a pediatrician internist. And then Debbie Coulthard, she's a nurse. She's attended many of these classes, also a diabetes educator. So you can read about our profiles here. There's Misty Carlson, who Eric was just talking about. She's a pediatric cardiologist here in town. And then we also have Dr. Gutierrez. He's in private practice, and he's part of the group as well. So there will be more added to this list over time. So stay tuned.
Any thoughts from anyone? Questions?
It'd be nice to offer to our doctors. I was careful this time to pick someone whose last name or part of it he comes from India. I thought, oh, there's plant-based people in India. Otherwise, it's a problem. You go in there and it's what the other person was saying they run into. But I think if there's that particular group, maybe they haven't all heard about your professional group.
Yeah, feel free to share it with your medical providers. I'll have that, like I said, I'll have the link up. It's basically just eugeneplantbasedproviders.com is the web address, but we bought a domain for that, eugeneplantbasedproviders.com. But I'll put the link in the emails going forward to starting this weekend.
I know when I went in to see him on the one and first visit, two visits I've had with him, he right away ordered a B12, which none of the others I saw in town wanted to do. He already knew something. And I thought, this young guy is going to help me. So, and my goal is to not have medical sites determine what my care would be if I have anything, if they find anything. So I don't want them to find anything because I'm really healthy. And I've been trying to do this since last spring when I first started watching some of these. And I can't say this is so easy, but I keep remodeling my kitchen cupboards on the inside and take my stuff to Eugene Mission I'm not using anymore to the kitchen. And then I just replace it with what I can eat. And the oat groats are wonderful. So I got rid of the rolled oats. It takes such a long time to do this. And anyone who just started, it's like just hang in there, and sometimes you'll kind of go off track. And my biggest problem is I don't eat enough in a day. So I got to get more calories in. I figured out that's my problem. So I'm working on that one right now.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to share a story that I had about how easy or difficult this is. 3 weeks ago on a Monday afternoon, I work every Monday afternoon now, volunteer at Volunteers in Medicine in Springfield. And a lady came in to see me. She was having some discomfort in her leg. And of course, there isn't a patient that I touch bases with anymore that I don't ask them about the 4 root causes of illness: what they eat, how they move throughout the day, the chemicals they're exposed to, and how they're dealing with stress. So it doesn't matter what problem they come in with. If it's a headache, a bellyache, or whatever it is, I learn about their diet, their exercise, the chemicals they're using or exposed to, and how they deal with stress. The 4 root causes of why you either develop disease or how to stay healthy. So I went through it with this person, and she had been having this pain for several years, off and on. It wasn't anything that was not allowing her to work. She'd been to several other providers. And I said, perhaps it's time to do some dietary changes to cut down on the inflammation in your body and see if that gives you some relief. So we reviewed what kind of things that she could eat. How did I do this quickly with her? I said, do you have a smartphone? And she said, yes. So I had her pull out the smartphone. We downloaded the app, Daily Dozen, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. It's a free app. You can do it on iPhone or Android. And for those of you who are new, I'd encourage you to do this. Get the app, Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen. And so then I went through it and showed her how to click on the eye so that she could tell serving size and that the various options she could have. And literally, I think I spent 40 minutes at that visit with her. She came back 3 weeks later and saw one of the nurses first. The nurse came out very excited and said, this patient is just like bubbling over with enthusiasm. So I walked in the room and I said, so how things going? She says, well, I'm still having some discomfort in my leg. However, I lost 7 pounds. First time I've been able to do that over 3 weeks. I love what I'm eating. I finally get to eat foods that I really have been told for so long are not healthy, like potatoes or beans and other kinds of things. And she says, it's just like I have a new life. So we would like that for you all also. It can happen very quickly, or it can take a long time. It can feel like learning how to play the piano or learning how to swing a tennis racket, taking literally hours of practice and thought changing. What happens for those who can do this more quickly, they talk to themselves about what they're thinking, why they're choosing a food. Is it going to bring them health, as opposed to thinking, oh, I have to give up this and give up that, and this is such a pain. And so your mind can truly influence how rapidly you are able to progress on. In my case, I sat and listened to one special on TV by Sanjay Gupta. He changed my life in less than an hour on the last heart attack, because my wife, she had a strong family history of heart disease, and I decided to change what I was doing for her sake, not for me, but to keep her alive and not having to have a heart attack. And it's been 10 years and she has no evidence of heart disease. And I'm glad I made the decision for my sake also. And so we started this, we heard the special, we watched a video, Forks Over Knife, and 2 days later, we gave all our processed food and the standard American diet foods to our kids. We didn't know it was poison at that time. I didn't really have any belief this would make a difference in my life or theirs. And I'm sorry I did that now. I should have thrown it out. But I want to encourage you all, whether it takes you a day or two to make a decision or whether it takes you 5 years, keep reading through the science, think about it, and learn to make decisions other than what your parents, your grandparents, or some friend or some article told you might be a good thing to do.
That's a good recap from Charlie's class, introduction class 2 weeks ago. He told his story and showed some great slides of what some of the more memorable ones is probably what we used to eat in 1900 versus 2010, and all the introduction stuff he talked about. And then you probably remember mine whether you saw my introduction live or recorded back on January 4th. I kind of gave my background, how I got into it, and then talked a little bit about lifestyle medicine and the power of lifestyle medicine. And then you probably remember the squaring the curve graph I talked about. And so that was kind of the gist of my introduction. And then last week we had some of the meal preparation and planning, went through some of the stuff on the website, and hopefully that's kind of where we're here at the open forum this week to kind of rehash any questions or thoughts or comments or anything you guys have from those first 3 weeks before we move on to the next topic next week for weight management. Questions that people have, anything basically.
Hi, Scott. It's Dolly.
Hi.
After last week,
Dolly, wait a second, because your microphone got turned off. Okay, go ahead, speak.
sorry.
Start over.
After last week, we went ahead and ordered all the cookbooks that were on the resources. We're
Oh,
getting
wow.
into this slowly, but we've gotten rid of our processed food, all of that. And we even this week just started buying the plant milk, the almond milk, and I like it. I don't
Good for
drink
you.
milk, but use it on the cereal and things like that. So yeah, we're doing good. It just is one of these things you can't let go of. Once you get started, you can't let go of it.
Well, good for you. Great job.
So thank you very much.
Welcome.
I have a question. Someone mentioned the difference between oat groats and rolled oats. So are rolled oats not to be recommended?
You can take that, Charlie.
Yeah, so rolled oats are great. I ate rolled oats for about 6 or 8 of years before I found groats. The difference between a rolled oat and a groat is how it grows on the plant, the oat, and it has an extra layer of fiber over it. Whereas when you roll it out, that extra layer of fibrous material kind of gets sloughed off, and you roll the remaining oat into a flat piece. It can be thick rolled oats or it can be thin rolled oats. Oats are healthy however you eat them. I like groats because it has a different texture. It's a firmer thing. It's I can't say it's nutty in flavor, but it's a treat to me. So we'll eat rolled oats at times, but we love groats, Groats.
Where do you find them? I've never seen a groat on the
So
shelf.
a groat looks like,
No, where do you buy them?
oh, you buy them at Whole Foods, I believe, has groats, but really Natural Grocers has groats. We buy ours by the 25-pound bag from what's the market that
Hummingbird Wholesale.
what is it?
Hummingbird Wholesale?
Yeah, Hummingbird Wholesale. You got to spend $150.
They
But-
do sell 5-pound bags, by the way.
Yeah, but then you have right now with the pandemic, to the public, you have to get an order together. So we buy our walnuts, we buy beans, we buy groats, we buy that and get it up to $150. And we do that about, I don't know, twice a year. But you can buy them by the pound or to try it out by going to Natural Grocers. I know that they have groats.
That's the same as steel cut oats?
Yeah, so yeah, if you take the groat and you cut it up, that's steel cut oats.
Yeah.
So
Winco has groats.
who
and
else?
they're
Winco?
Winco in the bulk section.
Okay.
Winco has almost everything. I love that store and it's cheap.
Yeah, they have a lot of bulk and it's cheap, inexpensive. So yeah,
Do they
get them.
have organic? Is it organic?
They do have some organic stuff. And if you want like the big 25 pounds or whatever, you can have them order it for you and you get an extra discount on top of it.
Huh. Okay.
But did I hear you say that steel cut is kind of the same?
Yes, it's kind of the same.
Okay, because I'm familiar with steel cut, so, okay.
I think groats just means the whole thing. It could be applied to buckwheat or any of those. They still call them groats.
Right.
When you have the whole grain, not processed at all.
Yeah,
Right.
The oat groat looks like a kernel. It's a kernel.
yes.
Yeah, the oats you want to avoid are the instant oatmeal and the microwavable packages that have a bunch of sugar added to them. That's the oatmeal you want to avoid.
Okay.
Any other questions about oats or whole grains?
Oh, yes, Charlie, I have a question about that. I'm sorry,
Yes.
I'm not putting my picture up because so many people on the screen bothers my eyes.
That's
for vertigo.
okay.
So
No problem.
I miss not having it up there, but I can do it for your small class. I'd like to know, maybe on Lisa's website, I love it, Lisa, what she has done, but I'm allergic to all oats, everything. So that cuts out a huge amount of different breakfasts I can have. And I've tried for the last 3 weeks to have vegetables for breakfast. I can do it. It's not enjoyable because I have them throughout the day. And so I have a recipe for quinoa porridge, which I love. But after that, for 2 or 3 weeks, that's kind of dull. So and I have stir fries for breakfast and brown rice. And I'd like to hear from anyone of maybe some cereal ideas that are healthy that I'm not allergic to. I've run out of ideas.
I don't do cereal because I don't like oatmeal, but since you're allergic, but I do tofu scrambles and that's really good. And then smoothies, like fruit smoothies are a really good breakfast idea. Just a lot of fruit. You got to eat a lot of fruit to get enough calories, but that might be a good suggestion.
Yeah, I have to watch my fruit because of hyperglycemia. And I am very careful with my sugars from natural fruits because I could have panic attacks. I don't know why, but I have to watch the amount of fruit I have that's really sweet. So I tend to avoid smoothies, maybe having one a week. But I think that's why I'm losing weight so quickly, Charlie, that I talked about at 2 o'clock. I'm having so many vegetables and I can't have a lot of nuts. They're acidic for me, and I'm just running out of ideas. And if I drop my weight too low, because I'm dropping now too much, my husband feels I'll have to quit. And so I'm kind of grasping for ideas because I don't want to quit, but he's very concerned about my health. I've lost almost 6 pounds now. I don't need to lose any. I know you said I could go down to 120. My husband just, there's no way. I weighed that in high school, and I just don't want to be that skinny. So I have to be very careful. So I need ideas that can help me maintain my weight. So anything you have about that, I'd really appreciate. And breakfast, I'd like a varied breakfast.
Can you do peanut butter?
I can. Peanut butter I saw online is acidic. That was my go-to. I was having too much and I developed the intestinal trouble with burning that I've had before, and that's from acidity. So I've cut down to peanut butter maybe once every couple of days so I can keep my acidity down. I do love peanut butter though, but I can't eat raw nuts very much at all. They're just too acidic for my system.
Can you eat avocado?
I do. I had actually about 3/4 of a one with dinner tonight. I love avocados. Yeah.
Kim recommends buckwheat pancakes. Can you have
No,
buckwheat?
No.
How about millet? I've made really good kind of pancakes and also croquette type things with vegetables with millet.
I haven't had millet for a long time, but it was all right then. Thank you. I had forgotten about millet.
It's pretty high in protein and considered not acidic. It's a anti-inflammatory, okay food, I've heard.
I think I can make that using my quinoa porridge. So that would be something diverse. Thank you so much, Linda.
Sure.
Since we're talking about whole grains, let me just show you really quick. I just added this quick reference guide to cooking whole grains. So this is under the recipes tab on the website, class website. Then you can click here, and it's kind of have to enlarge it. You can probably see it okay, but it just is a nice little quick guide of all the different types of whole grains and how you cook them. So which ones are gluten-free, for example, and so that's there on the website. So like barley does contain gluten, 1 part grain to 2 parts liquid, simmer for 40 to 60 minutes. So it's this little quick cooking guide that you can look at on the class website.
I just read them quickly. I'm allergic to about half of those.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh.
If you're not allergic to beans, I saw a bean pancake waffle recipe online.
Oh, well, I find if I mentioned in 2 o'clock, if I have more than 1/4 of a cup of beans a day, I have a lot of intestinal issues with that. But I'm building up. I think as I work with it and stay calm and stay positive, continue exercising, and I think I'll gradually adjust to the beans. I like them. They just don't digest well for me. It's a familia problem. I have a history with my family, my growing up, some very similar issues. So.
Well, keep at it.
I will.
Okay, hopefully you got some
Yeah.
suggestions tonight that'll be helpful for you.
I did, Charlie, and I really appreciate you and Scott. I've talked to Scott a little bit about this at OMG, and it's just trying to keep a balance so I can stay in the program, and I don't want to upset my husband. We've been married almost 54 years. He's very concerned about my weight loss right now, and so I'll keep working at it.
Okay.
But yes, thank you.
She doesn't want to be real skinny.
Sounds like a good man. A lot of men, unfortunately, are focused so much on women being skinny.
Well, I had to go to Germany to meet him. He's a wonderful husband.
Okay, anybody else?
Well, I have something that is difficult for me. I became a vegetarian in 1968. I was in the Peace Corps in India, and the first day I was in the village, and everybody in the village pretty much were vegetarians. They brought me, knowing I'm American, brought me a live chicken. I said, oh, you know, I don't feel like chicken tonight. And then the next day, they brought me the head of a goat with eyes and fur and everything. And I said, oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm vegetarian. and that's how I became a vegetarian. And these people had something, the word for food and the word for this meal were the same. And they ate this meal, if they had food at all, every meal. It was the same food with different vegetables and different legumes. And it included, and that's how I ate during my 2 years there. And I was healthier than I've ever been, I think. But it did include some eggs, and it did include, they didn't eat many eggs, but I ate some eggs. And it did include yogurt, homemade yogurt, right from the cow that walked into your house because you couldn't chase it out. And I'm pretty healthy, I think. And, you know, blood work and things show that I'm pretty healthy. But I want to lose weight, and I think that would help my health. And also, I just am having trouble eliminating the dairy products. And I wonder if you have anything to say about that.
It's a tough one. It's especially cheese. It's very addicting. And so luckily these days it's a lot easier to avoid dairy. There's a lot of replacements for it, but unfortunately a lot of the replacements tend to have a lot of added sugar and oil and things like that, like the vegan cheese and things like that. So it's not gonna, so it's not helpful to trying to lose weight. Some of those replacements tend to be, highly processed, added sugar and oils and stuff. So it doesn't help with the weight loss thing, but it is easy to get replacements for dairy products with with the soy-based yogurts and all the different nut milks and things. But otherwise, it's just kind of like watching that little section. I don't know if you're on the Facebook group. They posted about the little section on. I don't know if he put it up or not yet. The Neil Barnard's little interview where he talks about what the dairy industry does, how they essentially how dairy products get to the market. And it's kind of like just watching that, you're like, oh, I don't want to support the dairy industry anymore with that kind of treatment. But
Yeah.
so but that's kind of getting into the ethical side of things. But it's for health, it's better to avoid the animal products because of this extra saturated fat, the insulin-like growth factor, all the different things we talk about in these classes as far as the health reasons. What's the science say?
Cool. Well, I came to get motivated about that. Also, there were people who ate fish in India who called themselves vegetarians, and when I questioned them about that, they would laugh and say, "Oh, fish are fast-moving vegetables."
Pescatarian, I guess would be
fast-moving vegetables.
Neil Bernard's book, The Cheese Trap. If you haven't read it, it's a good book to probably get. Connolly, you have your hand up. Unmute your microphone, or maybe you just put the hand up. I'm not sure.
No, just a quick question, kind of stemming off of, I think it was Lynn's conversation about breakfast. So I kind of just have started this journey, and for health reasons like hypertension and family history, heart disease. And so for Christmas, I got a Mediterranean Instapot recipe, and we've been, exploring with that, and kind of interesting seeing like some of the, couscous and farro and millet and quinoa and some of those things being mentioned, and having, vegetable dishes with that. But one question kind of, talking about the Western diet, and is there any sort of material out there to read, like kind of the concept of like, you have to have breakfast, you have to have lunch, you have to have dinner, like, and I feel like, in my upbringing, like that was pretty evident. Like you had breakfast, you had lunch, you had dinner. And is that like a necessity, or should it be more, kind of hunter-gatherer, like eat when you're hungry? Sorry about that. Any sort of information that can be shared?
So if you could watch last week's session on foods to eat, you'll learn you can eat throughout the day, 1 meal, 2 meal, 3 meals, or graze, whatever you choose to do, and the various options you have. There's a whole bunch of them. If you have access to the website, which I suspect you know, you can, just listen to last week's session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I've been trying to on those.
Most important thing is just what you're eating, rather than how much you eat at what time or whatever. And of course you want to eat when you're hungry, and not eat out of habit, eat just because it's time to eat, but am I actually hungry? And kind of you'll get in tune with your body. I think a lot of it is, if we're eating the standard American diet, lots of high fat, high sugar, high processed foods, we're kind of eating not based on true hunger. It's kind of more like Dr. Joel Fuhrman talks about, if any of you are familiar with Joel Fuhrman, kind of a toxic hunger thing. And what that really is kind of like, so say you drank 10 cups of coffee every day. If you suddenly stop drinking coffee, you'd go through withdrawals, and that's just from all the caffeine. And so it's the same thing with the standard American diet. It's so toxic, it's so it's so pro-inflammatory, it's so toxic, it stimulates dopamine to make us feel good, all these highly processed, high calorie dense foods with lots of sugar, salt, and fat, that when you suddenly stop eating that, when you're done digesting that meal 2 or 3 hours, 4 hours later, you start to go through withdrawals, and we tend to interpret that as hunger. It's like, oh, I don't feel very good, I really need to eat something. And that's really just withdrawal from that toxic food. And so then only thing that makes you feel better is to eat again. And because now you go back into digestion mode again. And so you're kind of quelling that it's almost like a drug addiction in a way. And so when you get off of that food, sometimes you don't, if you go cold turkey and totally go 100% plant-based from the standard American diet, if it's a really unhealthy standard American diet, then sometimes people the first 2 or 3 weeks, they don't feel so good because they're kind of withdrawing from those foods. But as you kind of you're going on a whole food plant-based diet and you're really kind of getting going with it, you start to get in tune with your true hunger. And true hunger is kind of like it's a sensation that you get kind of in your throat, your upper chest and throat, kind of like thirst. It's not uncomfortable. It's just kind of this like, oh, I'm really actually hungry. Almost anything sounds good, right? And so that's kind of like thirst, and that's what true hunger is. And it takes some time to develop that connection. You'll get that connection with your body. You really know when you're truly hungry versus if you're still trying to get rid of some of the bad foods, you'll kind of be able to get that distinction between true hunger and what we call toxic hunger. So, but as far as your question on eating, I think it's what I guess focused in the beginning, maybe just focus more on what you're eating rather than maybe worrying as much about when should I eat, how much should I eat, what time should I eat. And there is some good data, and we talk about in some of the classes about the circadian rhythm and intermittent fasting and the timing of certain foods as far as kind of some of the details, splitting hairs on. You actually can lose a little bit more weight if you eat more earlier in the day versus later in the day, and those things have some impact. But for someone that's new to this, I would just maybe focus first on what you're choosing to eat and kind of getting some meals planned out and whatnot.
Connolly, the other thing is that might be helpful, being new and just starting to transition, is to spend a couple conversations with Lisa Chick, the medical student, who can kind of help guide you a little bit too. And I think she has her email in the chat room. I think you'd find it helpful. Just a suggestion. You don't have to, but Amber.
I'm pretty new to this, and I just kind of, I guess, came on it by coincidence. I've been having a lot of health issues, various things, some autoimmune stuff. And since my hysterectomy, just problems with weight gain, like all of the sudden, and being able to like get that off. And the health issues have been so bad, I've been out of work for a month and a half. And so, because I get just terrible pain in my stomach from like colitis and stuff like that. And so I was talking with a naturopath, and she basically said, well, focus on foods that are easy to digest, like vegetables, and see how that goes for a couple of weeks. So I decided to give up meat. So I did that for like a month, and it felt like insanely better. And I still was having some issues, and I reached out to someone else who I know, and she said, well, dairy is way worse than meat. And so she actually recommended that Game Changers thing that you guys were talking about. So I watched that, and I gave up dairy and eggs about a week and a half ago. And I couldn't believe the difference. I'm still having like some issues, but I went to the doctor, which is actually the doctor who recommended this. And I was asking about vitamins and shortages of things that I could get by following this diet. And he recommended this class. But I've also had some tests, and they said that I'm low on my iron in my blood test. And so they want to prescribe me an iron supplement, but I'm hearing that the supplement can be hard on your stomach. And I'm wondering your guys' opinion about the iron supplement versus trying to get that through diet. And also, since I'm new to this class, if there's anything more to what you guys are talking about other than avoiding, is it just basically avoiding animal products, animal protein, or are there other parts of this?
It's avoiding, I mean, it's a whole, so by definition, 100% whole food plant-based diet is a vegan diet. And if you're following it 100%, but the other thing that, this is a good question, because being vegan tells, when someone says they're vegan, that tells us what they're not eating, but it doesn't tell us what they are eating. So if someone's vegan, they're not eating any animal products, no animal muscle, no dairy, no eggs, nothing that's from an animal origin, but they could be eating, Oreo cookies, French fries, donuts, junk, right? Vegan junk food. So that's not healthy. So that's not a whole food plant-based if they're eating that. So it's not, so if you're following 100% plant-based diet, you're not only avoiding animal products, but you're avoiding processed foods. So refined sugars, refined flours, things that are that have been processed. And so if you're doing it 100%, now someone could say, well, I'm eating a plant strong diet, plant forward diet, mostly plant-based diet, and they could still be eating some animal products in there. And that can still be considered plant-based because you're eating mostly plant-based. It's just if you're saying 100%. So the reason Charlie and I teach it to do it 100% is just because that's the only diet that's ever been shown to reverse heart disease, which is the #1 killer. And then a lot of patients that have diabetes, that are on insulin and whatnot, if they go on 100% whole food plant-based diet, those are the ones that we see that go into remission. They can get off their insulin and all their medications. And so we teach it.
Even for type 1 diabetics?
Not type 1. So type 1, you'll always need to be on insulin. So when we say put it, yeah.
My
so putting,
daughter's type 1 diabetic.
Yeah. So putting diabetes in remission is only for type 2, but it's good for type 1s as well. So type 1s tend to develop some insulin resistance and a lot of complications as well. And so if they go on 100% whole food plant-based diet, a lot of times their insulin requirements go down by 60 to 70%, and they have much better health and everything. So they'll never get off insulin totally because they just don't make it anymore. But then to go back to your other question about the iron. So one thing I always want to talk about when someone says, well, I have low iron, the most important question is, are you anemic? So are your red blood cells and your hemoglobin and your hematocrit, which are your red blood cells essentially, and the percentage of your blood cells in your blood, are they low? So #1 question is, are you anemic? Are you?
I don't know. They just said, I'll be meeting with her again, but they called me on the results and was saying that my iron was low. And I've been also having, I thought I was having heart problems. So I was going into the ER with debilitating, terrible chest pain and shortness of breath and dizziness. And I've had terrible fatigue. So the doctor's saying that's where they think all these chest pains and shortness of breath and everything is coming from this iron shortage, but they didn't say anything about anemia.
Okay. Yeah, because actually having low iron stores is a good thing, as long as you're not anemic. And so because there's really good studies on this, that it's actually, as long you want, so your goal is to have enough iron to make enough red blood cells. And so if someone's anemic, then their iron stores are low and they're anemic, then yes, they need to be on iron replacement. Or the foods that are of plant origin that are high in iron are like your beans, your nuts and seeds, your whole grains, dark leafy green vegetables. So those are your iron winners when it comes to plant foods. And so you want to be sure you're getting plenty of iron in your diet. If you're anemic and you're eating a lot of iron-rich foods, and then you're still anemic, then you need an iron supplement. But what happens is if someone's not anemic and they just have low iron stores, a lot of times medical providers will still recommend you take an iron supplement, but that's not really based on good science, because it's actually good to have low iron stores but not be anemic, because what we know is when people have high amounts of iron in their blood and they're not anemic, then that's actually iron is a pro-oxidant, and it actually is it's associated with poorer health outcomes. So you're actually better off having low iron stores, but enough iron to make sure you're not anemic. Because if you're anemic, you need to be worked up by your doctor to figure out why you're anemic. Is it because you have low iron? Is it because you're bleeding somewhere, from your colon or whatever it is? So that's important.
So are there additional tests to figure that out, or how? I mean, I guess I could just ask my doctor if I'm anemic, but do they have other?
No, it's just the basic blood count. So when you get a general complete blood count, they'll know whether you're anemic or not. So if you're, and there's other things we look for. the size of the red blood cells and things like that, as far as to tell what kind of anemia you have. If you have low numbers that show you're anemic, then there's different types of anemia that we look at for different deficiencies and things. But yeah, you want to talk to your doctor about it.
Okay, so then are you suggesting with this diet, do you think that what you guys try to follow is 100% no processed foods, or do you have some?
I mean, that's the goal, but I'm not 100%. I mean, I still eat some bread. I mean, bread's processed. When I go to a restaurant and get, hummus or something at a restaurant, there's gonna be some oil in it. So I can't claim I'm 100% whole food plant-based, because I do still eat some of those kinds of things, but I don't eat any animal products, and I try to keep the oils and processed foods to a minimum as best I can. But we're all in different places and have different health goals, and yeah. So it's all inclusive. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Even if someone's in this class and they're never planning to give up animal products or even processed foods, that we're not going to ever judge anybody, or everyone's welcome here. It's just basically you have your own health goals and your goals for your health, and then we show you the science to help you move in the direction of a more plant-based diet to achieve your health goals. That's kind of the whole point of the classes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
Would the Tuesday afternoon times be helpful for her?
Potentially, we in the Tuesday afternoon times, we spend a little bit more time thinking about your thought process and changing your thoughts, and so that there could be some benefit with that, but we address individual issues. There's a little bit more time to do that in those classes. But for someone who's just transitioning, sometimes it's best to do one-on-ones with Lisa for a few times. And then, if you have the time, follow and see what the 2 o'clocks are like. And if they work, you come. And if not, you don't. Everybody gets to do what they want to do.
Also, there are whole plant-based supplements that are, that put more iron into your system. One of them is called Floridix. And it doesn't cause constipation. It's made of raisins and things like that.
Any other questions, suggestions, thoughts?
I have a question for you, Scott. I'm a little confused now about what anemia is, because I always thought that low hemoglobin and hematocrit is the defining thing for anemia. You're saying no?
No, that's correct. So that just tells you you're anemic, but some of the other numbers on a complete blood count tell you what kind of anemia you have. So it's probably more information than you guys want, maybe, but so if the red blood cells are smaller than the average size, which we can tell on a complete blood count, that usually tells us you probably have iron deficiency anemia or a hereditary thalassemia. There's some other types of microcytic anemias, we call them, when there's micro meaning small, cyto means cell anemia. So microcytic anemia means small cells, small red blood cells. So you have to have the low hematocrit and hemoglobin to get the definition of anemia. Then it's like, okay, now what kind of anemia do you have? And then there's anemias, macrocytic anemias, which are large red blood cells, and that usually means you have like folate or B12 deficiency. So there's different. This is all medicine stuff. So it's just there's ways, but it's important to know what your blood count is, and then if you think you have a microcytic anemia, then you check the iron studies to see what your iron stores are and some other numbers, and it's a whole. We could probably spend I'm sure Charlie could do a whole hour class just on anemias, right, Charlie?
Well, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to share one video with you all, just to kind of sum up some of the issues. I think they go over the foods. Dr. Dean Ornish is talking about saturated fat is not a health food. It's a short clip of about 8 or 9 minutes. And I think it'll kind of sum up some of the benefits. And we'll see if we have any other questions after this. Here we go. If I can find it, I'll share it. If I can't find it, I won't share it. But here it is.
You know, people say, oh, Americans have been told to eat less fat. You know, we're fatter than ever. Low fat is dead. It's all sugar. But we may have been told to eat less fat. But I went to the U.S. Department of Agriculture database because they keep track of the entire food supply, not what people say they're eating, but what they're actually eating. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes there's a big discrepancy. And what we found is that in every decade since 1950, we may have been told to eat less fat, but we're eating a lot more fat, 67% more fat, more sugar, more meat, and more calories.
More of everything.
More of everything. So not surprisingly, we're fat, not because we're eating too little fat, but because we're eating too much of everything.
Yeah, so the idea is that it's not that the low fat thing didn't work, it's that people didn't actually do it.
And the other thing is, besides eating more fat, is people, when they did replace fat, they would replace it with sugar. So you have the Snackwell cookies and, you know, the Entenmann's cakes and things like that, and that's not a good choice.
Right.
But I think if you actually look at all of the data, there's more evidence than ever that an optimal diet is low in fat and low in sugar. It's predominantly fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, soy products in their natural forms. And we've been doing studies for 40 years. So, you know, having been in all these different diet wars and diet debates, I said, you know, look, I'm done. Mm-hmm. You know, we've done... Every study that we've done has shown that these same lifestyle changes can reverse heart disease. We're able to show that for the first time. Type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity. We're doing the first randomized trial now to see if we can actually reverse Alzheimer's disease. We found that when you change your lifestyle, it changes your genes, you know, hundreds of genes, over 500 genes in 3 months, turning on the good genes, turning off the bad genes in just 3 months. We found that in a study we published that with Craig Venter, who first decoded the human genome.
Right.
We did a study with Elizabeth Blackburn, who got the Nobel Prize for discovering telomeres, the ends of our chromosomes that regulate how long we live. We've showed for the first time that in just 3 months, we can increase telomerase, the enzyme that repairs and lengthens telomeres, by 30%. And over a 5-year period, we showed again for the first time, we can actually lengthen telomeres, in a sense, reversing aging at a cellular level. So the more diseases we study and the more underlying mechanisms we look at, the more reasons we have to explain why these simple changes are so powerful and how quickly people can get better.
What do you think that the challenges are or that you face in trying to communicate this message? Because if you canvass the conversations that are occurring right now, they do tend to swirl around this, you know, new obsession with eating a high-fat diet, and, you know, everything you ever heard about saturated fat is wrong, and people are, you know, all about keto, and, you know, there's always a new thing coming, right? A new craze, a new trend. This is something you've been immersed in this for 40 years at this point. Yeah. And your message really hasn't changed from these studies that you did so long ago to date. I mean, they just sort of continue to confirm what you've been saying all along.
Well, it may seem new, but it's not new. I mean, I've been hearing this for 40 years. It actually goes back to the 1800s. It's really just it's an Atkins diet redux, whether it's an Atkins diet, a paleo diet, a ketogenic diet. It's all the same thing. And first of all, telling people what they want to hear is always a good way to sell books or magazines or newspapers or whatever. And as those media have been so disrupted, they're always looking for, you know, the next thing that they can hook readers with. Mm-hmm. Number two is that the studies are showing quite clearly that, yeah, you can lose weight on these diets because most people do eat too many refined carbs. And so eating fewer refined carbs, you're going to lose weight. And Atkins and I agreed on that. It's what you replace them with. You know, I'd love to be able to tell people that, you know, steak and burgers and so on are good for you, but they're not. You know, and if you actually look at the idea is to lose weight in ways that enhance your health rather than mortgage it. Mm-hmm. And there was a study in the New England Journal of Medicine that Stephen Smith published a few years ago that showed actually pictures of what happens on different diets, what happens in your arteries. I mean, you can lose weight with chemotherapy, you know, or smoking cigarettes, or lots of ways of losing weight that aren't really good for you. Amphetamines are a good way of losing weight. And what they found is that on a whole foods plant-based diet, your arteries are clean. On a typical standard American diet, which has the great acronym of SAD, they're partially clogged. And on a high-fat, high animal protein diet, whether you call it an Atkins or keto or paleo diet, they're severely clogged. And even if their weight and even if their blood pressure may be lower, because these often work through what are called non-traditional risk factors, things that people, the little white blood cells that nibble your arteries and keep them clean and so on. And it's not even just about over long periods of time. Even a single meal that's high in fat and cholesterol can reduce blood flow to your brain, can reduce blood flow to your heart. There's, the movie that James Cameron and Luis Hoyos and others did, Game Changers, which will be coming out soon, has this great scene with 3 athletes, and they give them a plant-based meal, and then they measure how the frequency and the hardness of their erections at night.
Right.
And then they gave them a meat-based meal the next night and found did the same thing. And they found they had 300 to 500% more frequent erections on a plant-based meal than a meat-based meal, and 10 to 15% harder erections. In fact, I'm told the film crew became vegan after shooting that scene.
Yeah, that will definitely get guys' attention, right?
Because it takes it away from this fear-based approach, like, I can't do what I want, am I going to live longer, is it just going to seem longer, all those kind of cliches, to say, these things are so much more dynamic than we once realized, that when you eat this way, your brain gets more blood flow. You can actually grow so many new brain neurons in just a few weeks. Your brain gets bigger, and particularly those parts of your brain like the hippocampus that control memory, that you want to get bigger. When people get older, they say, where did I leave my keys, and what was that person's name? A lot of that's reversible. Your skin gets more blood, so you don't age as quickly. Your heart gets more blood. We found you can reverse heart disease. Your sexual organs get more blood flow. And when people realize that it's not just about living longer, it's about feeling better and improving the quality of life, it really reframes that debate from, fear of dying, which is not sustainable, to joy of living and feeling good and pleasure, which really are.
Right. There seems to be a lot of confusion out there right now about saturated fat and cholesterol. For years, the scientific nutrition consensus was that saturated fat was bad, high LDL is bad. And then suddenly some studies came out that caught the attention of the media. And there were a lot of headlines and a lot of articles written about this idea that everything you ever heard about saturated fat is wrong. Cholesterol is something that we need and it's good, and you shouldn't worry about saturated fat, that actually saturated fat is a health food. So Can you walk me through how we got to this point and perhaps clarify the record or share your perspective on this?
I remember I was in Davos at the World Economic Forum 2.5 years ago when Time Magazine put a stick of butter on their cover.
Butter is back.
Yeah, and Nancy Gibbs was the editor-in-chief at the time, and she was doing this one-on-one interview with me, and she said, "So what do you think of our cover?" And I said, "Well, not so well." And she said, "Well, why not?" I said, "Well, because it's not true. The studies are showing that saturated fat doubles your risk of Alzheimer's disease. For every one pat of butter, your risk of premature death from all causes, we look at 300,000 people in the Harvard Physicians and Harvard Nurses Health Study, goes up by 5%. So these things really are important. Now, cholesterol is good in the sense that your body needs cholesterol. It's a building block for, sex hormones and nerve coverings and all kinds of things. And precisely because it's so important, your body will make all the cholesterol it needs. The dietary requirement for cholesterol is 0. But getting all this extra cholesterol is, we found in our studies that there was a dose-response relationship between the intake of dietary cholesterol and dietary fat and changes in the blockage in the arteries. This was also found in what was called the class study that David Blankenhorn did at USC many years ago. It was one of the first studies to show that the drugs could actually cholesterol-lowering drugs could reverse heart disease. And he found that the same dose-response relationship, the more fat you consumed, including saturated fat, and especially saturated fat, the more clogged your arteries become. Mm-hmm. And even a single meal, as we've been talking about, makes a difference. So, I'd love to be able to tell people that fat is good, that it's all sugar, but it's not. An optimal diet is low in both. Now, the third aspect is animal protein, which people, this whole fat versus carbs debate, I want to make sure that we cover animal protein, because there's more and more evidence coming out showing that animal protein is inflammatory. It causes chronic inflammation, it causes oxidative stress, and independent of its effect on, the fat versus carbs. One study came out that showed that people who ate a lot of animal protein had a 75% increased risk of premature death from all causes, and a 400 to 500% increased risk of premature death from type 2 diabetes and prostate, breast, and colon cancer. So, again, people like to simplify things and like it's all one thing. It's not one thing. It's all these things, and it's not even just diet, but it's all these other lifestyle factors as well.
Okay. So, gonna stop the share here and see if there are any comments.
People were asking what that was. It's I put it in the chat, but it's a saturated fat is not a, what was it titled? Saturated fat is not a health food, Rich Roll podcast.
It's not a, it's not a health food. So hopefully the original protein question that Ken asked was addressed by Dean Ornish a bit. And let's see, I hope that everybody kind of learned a little bit. Dean Ornish is one of the fathers of plant-based nutrition. He's been swimming against the stream, the medical stream, for many years. It took him 30 years to get his program paid for by Medicare, but it's finally accepted. And he's one of the people who we stand on his shoulders.
Yeah, next we're getting down to the end of the time. So next week is we're going to start it's kind of a 3-part series. I'm going to do for its weight management part 1 and 2. I'm going to do the calorie density portion of weight management. That's going to be the focus next week. And then 2 weeks from now, Charlie will do his weight management class, and he'll talk a little bit about calorie density too. I think you have a slide on that, but some other videos and some other discussion on weight management. And then 3 weeks from now, I'm going to do a class on food addiction and behavior change, which kind of ties into weight management as well, because that's ultimately behavior change is universal, all encompassing with any lifestyle change, whether it's exercise or whatever change you're trying to make. But also the food addiction component is another big part, because you might know what to eat to lose weight and lower that calorie density, but then it's the behavior change needed for it, and then some of the food addiction issues. And people are at different levels of, some people are completely food addicts, and some people are just kind of more emotional eaters, or just kind of out of habit, not having mindfulness when they're eating. And so there's different levels there, but we'll delve into that, and that's in 3 weeks, that particular class. So I hope you guys stick around and join us for those.
Thank
Velvet.
you guys.
Okay, thank
Hey,
you.
really quick, I spoke with my oncologist today and everything's going good, but I was talking to him about my iron thing because, my doctor had told me I need to take iron, and he was like, really, your numbers look okay. So I was glad to hear that he agreed. And I was like, I really don't want to take that. So he did suggest that she draw B12 and folate next time, just to get some more information. But yeah, anyways.
Great.
We're happy to hear that.
Yes. Have a good night, guys.
Yep.
Thank you.
Grateful for you all coming, and we look forward to seeing you all again in about a week. Scott, thank you a bunch.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Thank you.
Eric, and the rest of you.
Thank you.
We'll
Thank
see you in the
you so
movies.
much.
See you in the
Good
movie.
night. See you at the
Virtual
movies.
in the
Bye,
back.
everybody.
See you in the movies. Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Lisa.